The first Battle of Kharkov, so named by Wilhelm Keitel, was the 1941 tactical battle for the city of Kharkov during the final phase of Operation Barbarossa between the German 6th Army of Army Group South and the Soviet Southwestern Front. The Soviet 38th Army was ordered to defend the city while its factories were dismantled for relocation farther east. The German 6th Army needed to take the city in order to close the widening gap between the 4th Panzer Group and the 17th Army. By the 20th of October the Germans had reached the western edge of the city. It was taken by the 57th Infantry Division by the 24th of October. In that time, however, most of Kharkov's industrial equipment had been evacuated or rendered useless by the Red Army. Importance of Kharkov. Kharkov's railroad system. In the autumn of 1941, Kharkov was considered one of the Soviets' most important strategic bases for railroad and airline connections. It not only connected the east, west and north-south parts of Ukraine, but also several central regions of the USSR including the Crimea, the Caucasus, the Dnieper region, and Donbass. Military importance. Kharkov was one of the largest industrial centers of the Soviet Union. One of its greatest contributions was the Soviet T-34 tank that was both designed and developed at the Kharkov tractor factory. It was considered to be the most powerful tank plant in the country. Other factories that were located in the city included the Kharkov aircraft plant, Kharkov plant of the NKVD, and the Kharkov turbine plant. Military products that were in Kharkov before the battle started included tanks, Su-2, artillery tractors, 82mm mortars, submachine guns, ammunition, and other military equipment. The main objective for the German troops was to capture the railroad and military plants. Thus they desperately tried to keep the industrial area of Kharkov intact. Adolf Hitler himself stressed the importance of those military plants, stating, "The second in importance is south of Russia, particularly the Donets Basin, ranging from the Kharkov region. There is the whole basis of the Russian economy. If the area is mastered, then it would inevitably lead to the collapse of the entire Russian economy." Population of Kharkov. Kharkov was one of the most populated Soviet cities during World War II. It was rated at 901,000 people on the 1st of May 1941. In September 1941, the population skyrocketed to 1,500,000 people, due to multiple evacuees from other cities. After multiple attacks and many deaths, the population of Kharkov decreased to 180 to 190,000, which was the size after the liberation of the city in August 1943. Jewish population. Kharkov was one of the most important Soviet centers for the fleeing Jewish population. According to records, Kharkov had 10,271 people of Jewish ethnicity living in the city, 75% of whom were women, children, and the elderly. After the battle, many of them were either transferred to concentration camps or executed. Before the battle, the aftermath of Kiev. After the Battle of Kiev, Army Group Center was ordered to redeploy its forces for the attack on Moscow, and so the 2nd Panzer Group turned north towards Bryansk and Kursk. Army Group South, and in particular Walther von Reichenau's 6th Army and Karl Heinrich von Stülpnagels' 17th Army took the place of the Panzer Divisions. The main offensive formation of Army Group South, Paul Ludwig Abel von Kleist's 1st Panzer Group, was in the meantime ordered south for a drive to Rostov-on-Don and the Caucasian oil fields, following Führer Directive No. 35. The burden of processing Kiev's 600,000 prisoners of war fell upon the 6th and 17th Armies. So while the 1st Panzer Group secured the German victory in the Battle of Melitopol, these two armies spent the next 3 weeks regrouping. Meanwhile, Stuka needed to stabilize its southern flank and poured reinforcements into the area between Kursk and Rostov. at the expense of its forces in front of Moscow. The Southwestern Front, which had been completely destroyed during the Battle of Kiev, was re-established under the command of Marshal Semyon Timoshenko, one of the more capable Red Army commanders. The 6th, 21st, 38th and 40th Armies were reconstituted almost from scratch. Approaching Kharkov with the Battle of Moscow underway, the Germans had to protect their flanks, and on the 6th of October von Reichenau advanced through Sumy and Oktica in the direction of Belgorod and Kharkov. On the same day, the 17th Army commenced its offensive from Poltava towards Lozovo and Izium to protect the lengthening flank of the 1st Panzer Army. The Southwestern Front's 6th Army and 38th Army failed to conduct a coordinated defense and were beaten back. In the lead-up to the Battle of Moscow, the Red Army suffered a catastrophic defeat at Vyazma and Bryansk, suffering 700,000 casualties. The few reserves available were desperately needed to defend the Soviet capital, and thus were unavailable to Timoshenko's reconstituted Southwestern Front. With no reserves to plug the breach, the Stavka was forced to fall back to Voronezh in order to prevent a total collapse of the southern flank. Although the main objectives of the German army before winter fell were to capture Leningrad, Moscow and the approaches to the Caucasian oil fields, Kharkov was an important secondary objective. Besides the need to protect the flanks of its motorized spearheads, the OKH, the German Army High Command, also saw the importance of Kharkov as an industrial center and railroad hub. Capturing the city meant that the southwestern and southern front had to fall back on Voronezh and Stalingrad as their major transport hubs. When, in the second week of October, the dirty weather of the Rasputitsa and the poor logistics in the area between the Dnepr and the front caused the offensive to stall, Hitler personally allocated resources from the 17th Army to the 6th Army to ensure the capture of Kharkov. This, however, weakened the 17th Army's effort to protect the flank of the 1st Panzer Army and contributed to the German defeat at the Battle of Rostov. After the 17th of October, night frost improved the roads, but snowstorms and the cold started to hamper the Germans, who were insufficiently equipped for winter operations. Course of the battle. Preparing to take the city, the task of assaulting Kharkov itself was given to the LV Army Corps commanded by General der Infantry Erwin Vieiro. This corps had at its disposal the 101 Light Division, commanded by General-Lieutenant Joseph Browner von Heydrich, and coming in from the north, the 57 Infantry Division, commanded by General-Major Anton Dossler, coming in from the south, and the 100 Light Division, who did not take part in the battle. Sturmgeschützabteilung 197, commanded by Hauptmann Kurt von Barizani, had two of its three batteries attached to the 57 Infantry Division to provide close fire support during the assault. For the defense of Kharkov, the 216th Rifle Division had been reformed thereafter its destruction at Kiev. It received little to no support from other divisions or from higher command formations, because the 38th Army was in the process of a strategic retreat and the defense of Kharkov was only necessary as long as its factory equipment had not been completely evacuated. Battles on the western edge of the city. 57th Infantry Division plus a Panzer Brigade 101st Light Division. By the 21st of October, the 101st Light Division had reached the line about 6 kilometers west of Kharkov. The 228th Light Regiment spearheaded the division, its 1st and 3rd Battalions taking up defensive positions on the front, with the 2nd Battalion in reserve. On the 22nd of October, the regiment was ordered to conduct reconnaissance to determine the enemy's strength. That same day at noon, the regiment was attacked by a Soviet infantry battalion supported by tanks. The attack was repulsed and 2 tanks were disabled. That night, the recon information was transmitted by radio to the division HQ. The 216th Rifle Division had occupied the western edge of the city, with machine gun nests, mortar pits and minefields in place. For the attack, the 3rd Battalion was reinforced with 2 guns from the division's artillery, the 85th Artillery Regiment, a company of engineers and an 88mm anti-aircraft gun. The 2nd Battalion received the same reinforcements, but without the AA gun. The 1st Battalion acted as the regimental reserve. The 1st Battalion of the 229th Light Regiment would protect the left flank of the 228th. The attack hour was set at noon, in conjunction with the 57th Infantry Division. At 1100 hours, a liaison was established between the 85th Artillery and the 228th Light Regiments. The artillery was not ready at the time designated, so the attack had to be postponed. In the meantime, the anti-tank company, who had been stuck in the mud at the rear, finally arrived at the front and was ordered to assign 137mm at gun platoon to every frontline battalion. At 14:25, the artillery was ready and the attack hour was set at 1500. Assault on the city. The evacuation of industrial enterprises started before the Germans had a chance to attack. By the 20th of October 1941 it was virtually completed. 320 trains were sent with the equipment from 70 major factories. Kharkov was taken by von Reichenau's 6th Army on the 24th of October 1941. Occupation of Kharkov. The city was subject to its first occupation during the war, which lasted until the 16th of February 1943. The city never became part of Reichskommissariat Ukraine because of its proximity to the front. The staff of the 55th Army Corps acted as the occupational authority, using 57 ID as an occupation force. General Major Anton Dossler was that commandant until the 13th of December, when he was succeeded by General Lieutenant Alfred von Puttkamer. In Kharkov was transferred to the Heeresgebiet of the 6th Army and put under the joint authority of the Stadtkommandant and Field Command 757. German troops acting under the authority of the Reichenau Befehl of 10 October terrorized the population that was left after the battle. Many of the Soviet commanders' corpses were hung off balconies to strike fear into the remaining population. Many people began to flee, causing chaos. In the early hours of the 14th of November, multiple buildings in the city center were blown up by time fuses left by the retreating Red Army. Casualties included the commander and staff of the 68th Infantry Division. The Germans arrested some 200 civilians and hanged them from the balconies of large buildings. Another 1,000 were taken as hostages and interned in the Hotel International on Dzержinski Square. All of these war crimes were committed by frontline Heer commanders, and not by SS troops. On the 14th of December, the Stadtkommandant ordered the Jewish population to be concentrated in a hut settlement near the Kharkov tractor factory. In 2 days, 20,000 Jews were gathered there. Sonderkommando 4A, commanded by SS Standartenführer Paul Blobel, of Einsatzgruppe, started shooting the first of them in December, then continuing to kill them throughout January in a gas van. This was a modified truck that fitted 50 people in it. The van drove around the city and slowly killed the people that were trapped in it with carbon monoxide that was emitted from the vehicle itself and channeled into an airtight compartment. The victims died by a combination of carbon monoxide poisoning and suffocation. The German army confiscated large quantities of food to be used by its troops, creating acute shortages in the Ukraine. By January 1942, around one-third of the city's 300,000 remaining inhabitants suffered from starvation. Many would die in the cold winter months. As a result of the battles in Kharkov, the city was left in ruins. Dozens of architectural monuments were destroyed and numerous artistic treasures taken. One of the Soviet Union's best-known authors, the ethnically Russian Alexei Nikolaevich Tolstoy, wrote, "I saw Kharkov as if it were Rome in the 5th century.